Good afternoon, everyone. Just waiting another minute before we proceed. Apologies for a slightly late start, just a few slight home connection issues for myself. Okay, I think we'll make a start. So, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for our virtual recap of SplunkLive 2020. In today's session, we'll be looking at the keynotes and the guest speaker presentations from SplunkLive and reviewing some of their key takeaways. We'll then also be reviewing the other solution areas that Somerford associates were demonstrating on the day, which will be presented by Mark Atkinson and by Paul Winchester. As a way of an introduction, my name is James Astley and I head up the solutions arm of Somerford Associates. If you have any questions, please put them into the chat box and we'll try to answer them. And if we can't, we'll certainly endeavour to get back to you as soon as possible. All of the content from today will be made available post-webinar, including links and references. Okay, can we change slide? So, Somerford Associates are an elite licensed reseller and professional services implementation partner of Splunk. We've been working with Splunk and on behalf of Splunk for nearly a decade. As a business, Somerford Associates develop and deliver disruptive technology solutions that span data security, identity, and business analytics. We provide a range of best-in-class solutions that sit in the top right of the Gartner Magic Quadrant and Forrester Wave, like Splunk. Our certified and security clear consultants build and integrate bespoke platforms that significantly reduce risk and drive productivity. Both Somerford Associates and Splunk have a strong reputation within the FTSE 100, central government, and intelligence and defence space. And on the screen there, you just see some of the core offerings that we go to market with that adds value to our customers. Okay, can we change slide? So as part of the agenda today, as I said, we'll be touching on SplunkLive and some of the key takeaways from both the guest speakers and the keynotes. And then we'll be diving straight into some technical demonstrations and overviews from Mark and from Paul. Mark will be showcasing our augmented reality. And if we go to the next slides, he'll also be taking a walkthrough of our Splunk Machine Learning Toolkit application, which was actually demonstrated on the day. And we'll be doing a recap and some of the key takeaways from that as well. And if we go down to the next slides. And finally, we'll be wrapping things up with Paul Winchester, who'll be taking a dive and overview of the Splunk Business Flow offering. So that's the structure for today. As I said, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them into the chat box and we'll endeavour to get back to you. Okay, just moving on. So, SplunkLive this year, we heard from guest speakers, Chris Taylor from Airbus, Kylie West and Jono Paget from Bank of England, SOC, and from Mitchell Nova from Lloyds Banking Group. We also had keynotes from James Hodge, who is the Splunk Chief Technical Advisor for Splunk at EMEA, and from Matt Davis, who heads up Splunk's marketing team for EMEA. Moving on to the keynotes. So, James Hodge spoke about the subject of what is your data really worth. James has released a number of white papers and blogs on this subject that takes into consideration global research of over 1,500 businesses and IT decision makers across leading economies and industries. One of the key subjects James has touched on is how organizations view their value of their data and categorize their current understanding of data maturity within an enterprise. James spoke about data deliberators, data adopters, and data innovators, with 91% of organizations believing that given the right data, their organization is in a strong position to compete and succeed in its market over the next few years. The research considered Data deliberators are organizations that have yet to discover the full potential of data, dark or otherwise. Research highlighted that only 31%, so that many or almost all of their employees have access to the right tools to investigate data. And furthermore, from an operational perspective, only 34% of deliberators say that employees have access to the relevant data they need for effective analysis. Data adopters have acknowledged that uncovering data is the most important IT priority. They started providing dedicated resources necessary to make the most of their data. For 80% of adopters have employed a chief data officer or equivalent. At nearly half these organizations, many employees have the skills needed to investigate data, access to the right tools, and access to the right data sets for the proper analysis. But there's still significant room for improvement. And only 11% of organizations in the research fall into the most mature category of data innovators. These data innovators place a strong strategic emphasis on data and its business value. 65% say that uncovering data is the organization's most important IT priority. Innovators report that nearly half their data, approximately 48%, is captured, indexed, organized, and available for real-time business use. And so what? Well, in the words of Mike Tyson, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. Considering that statement in today's global economy, we need to have access to the raw data to quickly adapt to changing circumstances and ask questions immediately to scenarios that haven't been considered. Splunk is uniquely positioned to assist organizations with their data strategy, allowing you to send unstructured data from all of your systems, devices, and people into a single platform. You don't have to structure your data until you're ready to do so. Reacting fast to changing circumstances by asking questions you need immediately but have no previous knowledge of. Okay, moving on. And how to deliver. Well, Splunk and Somerford can work with you. We can help you to implement a scalable platform on either your own infrastructure or as a service. We invest heavily in our people to help support your adoption. Communicate effective data management so you can generate efficient and effective use cases. And assist learning incentives and role-based access so your people have the right access to the features and the data that they need. Moving on. On to our first guest, talker, Airbus. On the main stage at SplunkLive, we heard from Chris Taylor, who spoke about Airbus as a business, but also a review of technology and its people, demonstrating that Splunk is a business tool for Airbus and how data underpins its digital transformation programs. Just go to the next slide. Airbus are using Splunk to help drive the operational consistency across their business's digital transformation, whilst making use of the same platform to rethink cybersecurity in a digital age. For Airbus, the hypothesis was simple: a single version of the truth across the entire business globally. Moving on. And where are Airbus now? Let's go to the next slide. Well, over the last 18 months, Airbus have created a global data fusion platform with over 1,000 unique monthly active users in their Splunk platform, 20 terabytes of data ingestion per day, implementation of 350 SOC use cases, 200 data feeds across 200,000 assets, and most importantly, global adoption. Moving down. As a summary of some of the key business benefits that have been achieved by Airbus, security operations with the insider threat management with over 40 times more assets monitored using Splunk, 8 times the volume of data analyzed per day, automated responses through SOAR capability, significant reduction of data loss for Airbus employees and suppliers, with times of detect being reduced from weeks to minutes, and contextual cyber metrics for business and executive consumption. Driving warehouse productivity at a global scale by reducing the time to deliver spare parts, and the ability to predict and prevent business outages within the warehouse. A hypervision control center, reducing business impacts of IT and OT outages on aircraft production through predictive monitoring. And finally, real-time compliance of public cloud. Airbus have seen a 50% reduction in non-compliance of AWS cloud assets against their standards. But core to these benefits, Airbus have created a self-improvement, data-driven culture. Pretty impressive. Let's move on to the next one. Well, next talks came from the Bank of England with Carly and also Jonathan, but known as Jono, from the Bank of England, who took the time to talk about the bank's cybersecurity operations and the evolution of their SOC over 3 generations. Jono went through each stage of the SOC's maturity, starting with the first version, which was heavily alert-focused and reactive to detection of known threats, with a high degree of alert fatigue being common. As the SOC developed, the team became increasingly aware that alerts were great for known attacks, but what about the unknown attacks? They also took the time to review their approach to ensure they had the right technology to meet the bank's operating model. They asked the question, do we have a cybersecurity strategy documented for detecting attacks agnostically of our technologies on a one-pager? If not, this should become our priority. SOC 3.0 saw the team taking advantage of Splunk's machine learning toolkit and correlation statistical searches to boost their data mining capabilities. This information is then used for alert triage and to feed their incident response process. With a combination of standardized operating procedures, 273 analytic developed searches built around the MITRE ATT&CK framework, and an internal hypothesis of what the threats that the bank really faced, the SOC has moved to an automated triage and incident response capability. SOC 4.0 will be predictive, as so we're told by Johnny. And what does Johnny mean by that? Well, the bank hopes to be able to identify precursors to an attack and proactively intervene. Now, for an organisation that has a third of UK GDP going through the Bank of England, Splunk is responsible for helping protect over $1 trillion in daily transactions. And as quoted by Jono, that was at the point of the exchange rates at SplunkLive, so apologies, that might not be out of date. We can move on. And as a summary to the SOC's journey, the team outlined some of the core learning from their experiences. First off, design your operating model first, which clearly defines the processes and procedures, the attacks that are relevant to your business or organization. Don't be driven by the technology and invest in your people. Continuous improvement is paramount. The bank, over a period of time, realized that 80% of their time has been now switched to developing new analytics, and only 20% of their time supporting incident response. Nobody wants to just be a tier 1 analyst simply looking at Splunk alerts every day. Building appropriate SOC, as every organization's threat profile is different. The bank's threat profile is very different to, say, a supermarket retailer or that of a central government agency. Build an appropriate SOC. Moving on. Now, we're attempting to squeeze a lot of content into today's session, so unfortunately I haven't got time to review the talk from Lloyd's banking group in detail. However, I'd be more than happy to set up another call after today if you're interested. So please feel free to send messages through to the registration. I'm more than happy to jump on and do another talk. As a high-level summary though, Mitchell Nova from Lloyd's Banking Group spoke about how DevOps has helped digitally transform Lloyd's operating model. A typical Lloyd's Banking Group customer logs into their banking app 288 times a year versus the 4 times they now visit the branch. Mitchell's also spoken about balanced reliance versus cost and the idea of error budgeting. So just to cover off some of the other highlights from SplunkLive this year, and hopefully to whet your appetite for next year. There was over 1,100 attendees. That's over 1,100 Splunk users all in the same place at the same time, learning from one another. Splunk University is run either on either side of SplunkLive. There's a great chance, with a more cost-effective measure, an effective way of gaining Splunk-led education and certifications. So again, if you want more information on that, please feel free to message us and we can share that with you. There also that took place was Boss of the SOC and Boss of the NOC. Great events with over 100 teams taking place across both simulation events. Again, be great to get as many people there as possible next year, but also throughout the year, these events do also take place and actually run by Somerford. So more than happy to find more information on these events. And finally, we also launched our version 1 Digital Transformation Success Package, the DTP, which I know the public sector team had a huge amount of interest in. And that's really reviewing how we go from understanding requirements, but also taking that high-level approach and understanding the operating model and procedures that are needed for a successful implementation, but also adoption within an organization. Again, for more information on that, please reach out. I know both the commercial and public sector teams will be more than happy to talk to you. And a final word for myself before I pass across to Mark, who's going to take you through the next stage of Splunk's augmented reality. Just to say, at this challenging time, some of the associates are here to help. You've probably seen a few hashtags here to help on social media and content's been pushed out. There are a variety of initiatives in place that are free of charge, and we generally are here to support our customers during this difficult time. So if you do need anything, if it's simply just to ask a question, then please do feel free to reach out, and we're more than happy to take that on board. Okay. This time, we'll pass across to Mark. And let you move forward into Splunk's augmented reality.
Thank you very much, James. Hi, it's Mark here. So I hope you've enjoyed that section from James. Now we're going to cover Splunk augmented reality now. And first thing to say really is that at SplunkLive, there was a lot of interest in Splunk augmented reality. Many customers were coming just curious, what is it? How can it help me? Those kind of questions. And then we had some very specific questions from customers. And I'm hoping to address those in this sort section as well. So I've included bits and pieces that will be relevant here. So if we move on to the agenda, let me just take you through what we're going to do. So again, addressing those questions, what is Splunk augmented reality? For many of you there, you may not really know what Splunk's version of augmented reality is at the moment. And then I'm going to take you through some potential usage models. And these are usage models of customers that are already in the development phase or early on in the development phase, or potentials. So there's quite a mix there. Then again, specific questions that people are asking were about high volume assets and workflow automations. I'm going to touch on those. And then I'm hopefully at the end of this, you're going to be wanting to know how to get started. So first things first. Now, looking at who's online, most of you in the sort of the IT area, so getting the right data at the right time is day job for you guys, and not teaching you anything new here. But I want you to think about it in context of perhaps some of your business colleagues, some of the people that are looking after the business, and that is some of you as well, rather than the IT governance side of the business. And it's about getting data, the right data at the right time, in the right place. But the real thing about Splunk augmented reality for me is that it's automatic, and getting that data, live data, automatic, wherever you are, whenever you want it, relevant to you, is very, very important. And also Gartner have also agreed with this. And I think this is perhaps part of this digital transformation change, that it says that here, this was a 2018 prediction, that by this year, 50% of operational technology service providers will create strategic partnerships with IT-centric providers for IoT offerings. Now, that's IoT, but I think this is transformation across all businesses. And what is that really saying is that the business side and the IT side are going to be talking more and more about how they can work closer to help businesses be more efficient, be more effective, be more competitive. And this is a day-to-day thing for many people. And I genuinely believe that augmented reality can help certain customers, give them the edge in certain conditions and markets. So let's touch on what it is. So Splunk augmented reality allows you to interact with your data when you're on the move, and it's a location-specific technology, and I'll come on to that. So that's very important, because location-specific is presenting the data the way you need it, how you need it is critical to this application. Then part of it is to get you these live data visualizations and overlays onto your mobile device, and that's kind of the augmented reality piece. That's not all of the Splunk AR app, but that's a key part of it, of course. This is very critical as well, and we'll talk about this in a bit more in a while. It anchors to the corresponding asset. So your information is locked to that asset. So if you move around with your device, you're going to actually have the data where you need it, where you left it last, and that's quite important as well. So those things are very critical. Then the other thing is I talked about different types of data. Now we're talking about the best scanning methods. So the AR app itself is designed to give you this specific time and location thing, and it's done in 3 ways. So firstly, there's an outer layer, and what we call that is the geofences. And the geofences are really something where you're arriving at a factory location, an office block, and because you're in that region, because you're within that geofence, you're now getting data specific to that site. And that would be live feed data that's very specific, right up to the minute. So operators can, drive into the car park of their facility, and then once they've parked up, get their device out, and they've got live information that's relevant to them before they've even got out of the vehicle. So that's quite a critical opportunity, I think. Then, as that person may be moving out the car park into the building, you've then got this middle layer, which is beacons. And the idea of a beacon is that's now giving you finer granularity to your data. And the whole idea of this is that now you've entered into the building, you're into a specific room, part of a factory, a specific floor, particular area of a department. Now you're getting a different set of data because you're being fed by the beacon's location, and you know what you're looking for in terms of data relevant to that location. So it could be an accounts department, or it could be part of a factory packaging process or manufacturing processes, but you're getting that live feed data automatically to your mobile device. And perhaps this is the real key part of what people are thinking what Splunk augmented reality is about, is then you get these augmented reality workspaces. And this is the inner layer. Now you've navigated to within your offices and buildings, factories, to a specific area. You're looking at potentially a specific piece of equipment, a particular thing that you need to service. And now you're going to scan this device using codes, and you're then going to bring up this augmented reality interface to tell you all about it, and we'll come on to that sort of detail. Okay, so that's how it's done with these 3 different layers. How you initiate it then is very straightforward. With geofencing, that's GPS on your mobile device. It's already been pre-enabled by the setup, the administrator, or the user or operator of the actual Splunk AR, but it's predefined. So as you enter that geofence area, you're getting up specific information. With the beacons, it's iBeacons, that's BLE 4.0 devices compliant, and these are typically 5 meters up to 10 meter type ranges. It depends, you can tune the power of these devices. And then you've got things like quick response codes or QR codes that are generated by Splunk. You've got NFC tags, which can be integrated as part of your solution. But quite importantly, I think, is you've got these asset tags, and these asset tags are key because they could be part of the equipment before you've deployed Splunk AR. So you want to use those rather than have to create your own new set of QR codes. best way to do this, and what customers really came here for, is to actually see it. So I'm going to show it to you in 3 different areas as we showed with the model. So let's start with the outer layer, and this is the geofences area. So the idea is you're outside in a car park, you've then got out your device and you've brought up the dashboards, nearby dashboards, you know, outside the building, beacons, and now you can see that it's just brought up the geofence dashboards. And we're now looking at a live set of dashboards here, and this is the second, there's 2 I'm showing, and you can see the both of them there. So those are how you get up. It's as simple as that. You just get your device out, pull up the geofences, and all the dashboards that are relevant to your usage model, your user profile, will be given to you, fed to you automatically, and that's quite key. Now you've entered the building, you're inside, and now you're into a particular room, and now you're looking at beacons. So that's a beacon, and I'll just connect it to the beacon. So then we bring up nearby dashboards, and now you can see that we've got here a beacon, this Somerford beacon. So let's just let that play out. It's just this ID. Now we go to the geofences and select one of the geofences, and the same thing as before. For the sake of time, I'll move on, but you get the idea. You're bringing up that data. What I'm going to do now is show you a specific thing that we showed at SplunkLive, and this is courtesy of TGW Logistics. It's one of our customers that are quite happy for us to be public about, and they sent me this shuttle error data set, and they didn't really tell me much about it. So see what you make of this. And in credit to Splunk here, I know we're selling Splunk, but I was absolutely amazed. Within 30 seconds, we'd sorted out what the problem was, and you can see here, there's this, it was a motor jam. Currents went up, the current went up, temperature went up, and it was basically a jammed motor. And this is what happened with one of their shuttles. So these we're going to show you really is the fact you've got these alarm dashboards, and then we've got some extra information that I've just added as part of the mix, really. So let's just let this play out. So what you can see is I've got a QR code, scan the QR code, and what you're seeing here now is the live dashboards being brought up. Okay, you can play with the dashboards, you can move them around, you can position them and then save here, and then you're saved that position. Okay, so it's showing you the different information on dashboards. What I'm adding here is the information about anything really that you could add. So this is an operational video, but it could be an instructional video, it could be training video, it could be anything you like. And again, we've got PDF files which you can auto navigate through. And you can click on that and get to the right page you want to, so you can navigate quite easily. And this is kind of, it could be logistics, it could be anything, it could be a manual, any sorts of information really. And I've just got this on the other side really, only to show the fact that you've got more than one video possibility, more than one PDF, so you can have a large number of devices up. And then what I just showed at the end here is the fact that you can adjust all the dashboards at the same time, or you can just, you know, adjust one dashboard size as you want to. So that's basically how that plays out. And that was one of the key demos that we showed. In terms of usage model, again, we've got a few customers looking at this, and essentially things like factory warehouse optimization, talked about that just now. And then data center, one of our customers is looking at this idea for their server racks, and they've coined this phrase dashboards everywhere. So it gives us a tantalizing opportunity really of putting these innocuous QR codes up everywhere, so only the people with the right access rights and the right registered devices can see the data. So there's added levels of security all around a building at no cost virtually, because instead of having monitors up everywhere, you've just got QR codes, and that's their plan. And in operations, I think preventative maintenance is a key one. And not wanting to sort of promote too much the next section, I think coupled with machine learning, I think this could be a very powerful combination of understanding outliers and then understanding that in terms of where you are and getting the information for the vehicle that you're looking at, or device that you're looking at, for example. So I think that's quite an interesting proposition. And then you've got office activity, as I said before, group by group departments, and then healthcare is an area that we believe could be very, very beneficial for this kind of technology. So it's just some of many of the opportunities that we've got here. For the sake of time, I'm going to sort of skip through this a bit quickly. One of our customers was very interested in high volume assets, and so we worked with them to develop an opportunity. So if you can change the dashboard to a form field, there's a whole bunch of information I've shown you in the references here. We can talk you through this separately, but essentially that we're able to do multiple devices from the same effectively bring different dashboards up from scanning different devices, but you've got only one dashboard, like a superset dashboard to play with. So let's just quickly show this. Just to give you an idea, this is a little bit of a rough test that we did just before the SplunkLive. An idea is that you're scanning an asset and you're getting up a particular dashboard, and the asset IDs and all of this. So this is just a very simple rough one. And then you're scanning another asset without changing anything. And now you're getting a different set of information up here. This is the code here, which you looked at the side of the B, and then you're getting a different dashboard. And then finally, you've got a third one, and then on and on and on. And this is just an idea of one of many ways that you can do this concept of having multiple dashboards up without having to create separate dashboards for each one. So that's just a quick example. AR workflow automation, just very simply, I'll just quickly run through this. The idea is that if you've got people in the field, maybe they're training, maybe they're not experienced a particular piece of equipment, you can deploy AR workflow automation activities. So you've got these AR workbooks, playbooks that they can then go on and get step-by-step guidance. So let's just run this through. You can see the idea of running this video. So you're just running a playbook, you press play and it tells you what to do. If you've seen a blockage, and takes you through the next stage and replace the pump. I know that's very quick, but the idea is it guides you bit by bit. For the sake of time, I'll probably keep it quick. And this is a very similar one for IT space, taking a technician through the process of replacing a hard drive and giving video instructional support and actually updating statistics of that particular device as well when it's been repaired. So I'm hoping you're thinking, well, how do we get started? Just very quickly, it's iOS only for this year. It's Android for maybe later this year, and we're going to know more at .conf 2020 from Splunk about Android solutions. So it's really only iOS at the moment. To get going, it's really simple. You've probably already got Splunk Enterprise, Splunk Cloud. If you haven't, you can get 3 versions from Splunk.com, and then you can download from the Apple App Store the free Splunk AR app. The only thing I'd say is you need to also install Splunk Cloud Gateway for the connected experiences solutions, which is Splunk AR is part of. And then you'll get a choice of devices. They're all iPhone and iPad devices at the moment, or Apple. But check the suitable device. Advice is get the highest one you can for your particular project, because it is really numeric processing intensive and does the lower ends get a bit too hot, really. And Somerford have created a startup guide as well for you if you're interested. And that's it. I'm looking at the time and I'm going to move on quickly. Hopefully you'll find it interesting. Please feel free to add questions as we go. But I wanted to get onto the machine learning now. Okay, so machine learning toolkit. So this is, again, was seen by a lot of people and a lot of interest in this area. We're going to very quickly touch on this. So really, the whole concept of this is machine learning is a subset of artificial intelligence, really. If you've got artificial intelligence, it can be as simple as things like, well, I've got a system which measures the weight of a person. If that person is under 50 kilograms, then we will class that person as a child. If it's over, it's an adult. So the idea is it's making a decision on whether it's a child or an adult. Very simple, if then else type statements. Well, machine learning takes it to a little bit different level in terms of it uses much more advanced mathematical algorithms and statistics. And the key difference when it comes to machine learning is it can learn without being explicitly programmed. And that's really what machine learning is all about. With deep learning, that's a whole new different topic and really out of scope of today. But the idea is that let's start with machine learning and we'll bring on more deep learning activities as we go forward. But one thing it isn't, and that's magic. So if you ask, there's a lot of hype out there about machine learning, and really it isn't this magical panacea of fixing everything. It's a problem, you just throw machine learning at it. And that's kind of one of the things that's been hyped up a little bit about machine learning. It has grown in popularity simply because the availability of the graphics core engines and multiple core engines is made it economically viable. But really, if you ask a techie what machine learning is, he'll give you perhaps a more realistic picture of really what it is, which is really an advanced version of maths. So fact and fiction. what machines can do with machine learning: forecast, memorize, you can reproduce, choose the best item, categorical types of searches. But what can't do is create something new that you haven't defined, get smart really fast, go beyond the task that you've set it really automatically, and it's not Skynet today, for sure. So a little pictorial version of this. So you can see the idea of anomaly detection, so fraud detection, things like predictive maintenance. So this is predictive analysis type work, and you're looking at things that are really outlying from maybe a predefined line of fit. So these are areas where you're looking for anomalies. You can do forecasting, which is time-based, or predictive analysis, which isn't time-based, and then find trends, sales, and those kind of activities as well. And then you have things like clustering. So clustering is where you're identifying specific patterns, and all of these have models associated with the MLTK, which you can use and adopt and try. So some of the things it is good at, so things that, if you wanted to work out things like life insurance, for example, so it'll ask you your age, genders, if you smoke, and it'll work out what your expected life expectancy is based on other models and other people that they've also had within that model. So it'll give you a life expectancy of this, that your premium is that. And these things are quite automated these days. And that's sort of an example of an application of determining relationships, if you like, within patterns and data patterns. If you can identify patterns, that'd be more useful for business purposes. And you could do things like Netflix, for example, if you've done 4 films that you watched, and other people have watched the same 4 films. Well, they've gone on to watch a 5th film, and you get these recommendations, and you say, well, you watched these 4, well, why don't you look at this? And this is probably, you're all very familiar with these kind of recommendation engines, I'm sure. Another thing, what humans are good at, of course, is looking at 2D, linear regression, looking at it by eye, even up to 3D. Humans are very good at that. But what happens when you've got 30-dimensional regression? And this is where you really need computers. As far as the computer is concerned, an extra dimension is not really a big deal, but for humans it is very difficult. They're good at spotting patterns, but when it becomes voluminous, it becomes really difficult. So what is it not good at? So you can't really throw out a problem if you don't understand it yourself. And this is one of the dangers of machine learning, is you think machine learning can just do things by magic. Well, it can't. You really have to understand the problem yourself before you can expect the machines to be able to answer and provide you the answers that you need. And we've heard the term, I'm sure, about garbage in, garbage out. One of the things about machine learning is if you do get it wrong with the garbage in, you can multiply the garbage out, and that is a really, really key lesson, and something to be very, very wary of, is that you need to be very careful. And an example of this is, you can produce good answers from good data, but if that data is not so relevant, you're actually weakening your own case and weakening your model. And the example here is, if, say, for example, you wanted to work out the costs of traveling across London, transportation costs, and you want to take into consideration things like transport type, the distance, time of day, class of travel. These have a bearing on the journey cost. But if you're adding into that data, well, what color tie a traveler's wearing, or if they're wearing smart shoes or trainers, and you're adding that data, the machine learning algorithm has to take that into consideration. And if they're doing that, it effectively weakens your model, effectively a dilution of your model, and therefore the accuracy levels are going to drop off. So that's something to be very wary of. The Splunk, one of the nice things about this is their approach was, let's not reinvent the wheel. So it looked at what was out there in the marketplace, and effectively there are things like scikit-learn, pandas, numpy, all of these standard things that academia use, that the industry uses. We thought, rather than create a new model ourselves, why don't we use these industry standards? And that is effectively what the machine learning toolkit is. It's actually applying a Splunk SPL front end to all of these exceptionally good algorithms. And that's a really, really key learning from Splunk to be able to apply something effective and quickly. There's also a deep learning toolkit which is more new, which is much more recent, and it uses TensorFlow and it uses Docker. So these are things that I think people would come onto after really understanding the machine learning portion. quickly then, because we're running out of time. Looking at this, you would basically download the machine learning toolkit. It's free on Splunk Base. I'm sure you're familiar with Splunk Base, but you also need to download Pi for Scientific Computing get the right version. It's Linux, Mac, Windows, and those combined provide you with the solution you need. Okay, and let's very quickly go into this so that we don't run out of time. Hopefully you can see this is now the machine learning toolkit interface. Now, what's nice about this is where it lands you. It's into the showcase area. And I think that's really, really effective, because if it landed you here and you're new to machine learning, you would probably think, okay, so what do I do with this? You know, you might be familiar with SPL. We're not really going to get the best out of it. So it lands you here. And I think that's really, really important, because there are 40, 50 or more models and examples to play with. And that's critical, because here somewhere is going to be something similar to the type of problem that you're trying to solve. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel, coin the phrase. Really look at what's already there and work with that. So a lot of you online are in the IT. Let's pick an IT one, server power. Let's quickly take you through this one. So this is an existing model. So what you've got here is an input lookup on some data that has already been effectively pre-screened, pre-munged. And what it's doing now is applying an algorithm to that automatically. Now, you might do a Splunk search yourself and create your own data tables as a result of this, pretty similar to what this is doing. And what it's actually doing is it's applying this algorithm, which is a linear regression algorithm. And what it's trying to predict, it's finished, the AC power of the servers based on, and this is the data that's basing it on. So CPU utilization is relevant, disk access is relevant. So these are all the relevant sections that you can choose to actually base your model on. This is important as well, splitting it for test and training. And that's important, because if you just train it and overtrain it, you can get something like 95, 100, near to 100% accuracy on your model, and think, fantastic, let's set that to production. But in production, you're seeing a result of 50% accuracy. Well, what's gone wrong? Well, you haven't generalized your model, you haven't applied enough testing, and it's overfitted effectively. So that's really important learning as well. So you split this up, 50-50, 70-30, these are kind of recommendations that you would want to use. Just to quickly show you the SPL, and this is just what the SPL is for this. So this is your input, and then it's saying fit this linear regression on AC power, and then fit to find this prediction based on this data and save it to this example here. So once you've saved the model, then you can reuse it rather than having to reapply it. And then it gives you these really nice visualizations, and it gives you an idea of the linear regression. And then it gives you an accuracy of nearly 95% and a root mean square of 5.54. So that's effectively 100% minus this amount, really, roughly speaking. So that's very, very quickly what it is. I would show you more, but I'm conscious of Paul's time. And therefore, that's just a very, very quick whizzy run through. If you have any more questions and would like to follow that with myself or one of my colleagues, more than happy to do that. Okay, so with that, looking at the time, I'd like to hand over to Paul now, who will take you through the business value set. So Paul.
Okay, just bringing it up. Good. Right, well, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon, everyone. Good to have so many people here. I'm going to take you through Business Flow, Splunk Business Flow. It's a relatively new product, not one that's perhaps had as much noise made about it as others, but I think the first impression you get is it looks very different to Splunk, but it's sitting on top of a Splunk platform and using data ingested in Splunk in the same ways as we would expect. So what is Business Flow? Splunk describes it as a process mining solution that provides transparency into actual end-to-end digital business processes and customer experience. Okay, sounds interesting. Process mining is an approach to automating business process analysis, which, in a similar way to machine learning, or using some of the tricks of machine learning, discovers patterns and calculates performance measures that we can then use in a business context. So what does that really mean? Well, as Splunk users, the core of this, the underpinning all of this, is Splunk ingesting log data into its indexes. And what we do is we sprinkle a little bit of extra information in, not very much, but just so that that data is tagged as to what part of your flow it is part of. So what we can see on screen at the moment is airport passenger flow, showing users, passengers rather, journeys through an airport. Hopefully that's reasonably clear. I'll just zoom in a little bit more. Ooh, this is a tiny bit fiddly. So you can see each of the steps, things like entering security, leaving the check-in area, frequent flyer lounges, all these things. Not a lot of that happening at the moment, sadly, but it's still a good example. And I think we can assume this is a US location because passport control is bypassed by a lot of people. So we're going to come back to that. I'm going to do some live demonstrating, so we all know where what's going to happen there, but we'll see if I get lucky today. So we take log information collected in Splunk, and this flow is built automatically, and that's a key part of this. It's automatic. You don't have to define what the flow is. In fact, the point of this is you don't. So however you've designed the system, what this does is it builds the flow based on what's actually happening, not what you designed it to do, and that can be quite informative if you discover, for example, that it's not behaving the way you designed it to. So the flow represents the actual step-by-step process, and as I say, without any specialist knowledge, you can generate this flow based purely on the data. The only manual thing you have to do is tell the system how to link it up. So usually business flow will be based around a key ID identifier, perhaps a session ID from a website, maybe an invoice number going through some sort of invoicing systems, anything like that, some sort of unique key that can be matched up through the systems. And it doesn't have to be in the same place. It doesn't have to be even in a single field. That's where we can apply some of the configuration in order to pull out what those IDs look like. And if we have a look on here, you'll see how these IDs, it's only showing one in this particular case, but in this case, it's all centered around the PAX ID, but it doesn't have to be just one. It can be multiple fields containing the same ID, and as long as that ID is consistent, the flow will work, the flow will get pulled together. As I say, it's done automatically. So thinking about this in the sort of context of the area that I specialize in, so I'm generally covering the sort of IT ops and DevOps part of the IT world for Somerford, and also the general business practice side of things as well. So where does this fit in compared to some of Splunk's other offerings? Well, the other major area I spend a lot of time with is ITSI. And the way I think of it is different when I'm explaining to people is what this is showing you is individual journeys, individual paths through a system. Whereas other tools in Splunk particularly, but also more generally in the market, focus on aggregation of data, averaging data, looking at overall performance. This is looking at specific activities. And one particular case where that could be particularly useful is showing outliers, showing edge cases or perhaps anomalies that are going to be visually very obvious. So I'm just going to take you through a little bit about what we can see on screen here. This is the kind of key view. This is the flowchart view. We had a quick look at the list view. And just to take you through what you can see on screen, I'm not going to do a full demonstration. We do have a more detailed webinar that I presented that we can link you to, and I'm more than happy to give anyone who's interested a more in-depth demonstration. So I'm going to be skimming over this a little bit. But on the left-hand side here, we have the various different filters that can be applied to this flow. And what those filters will do is adjust the flow in terms of how it's presented, how it's laid out, and how the individual steps within the journeys are calculated. And I'll demonstrate that in a bit. Across the top, we have the A/B comparison. This is really, really useful. It allows you to make some changes and compare two different versions of the flow according to different filters that you've applied, so you can really clearly see the difference that it makes. You could be comparing, I think you can compare two different systems as well, but come back to on that one. Then on the right-hand side here, we have the properties. So there are different ways of presenting this. This is the standard circuit view. If you lay it out in lanes, you're going to see that it's going to become quite difficult to see until I zoom in on it. But the principle is that, there we go. This principle is that it then presents it in that sort of left to right design rather than in a circuit. But I think in most cases, the circuit's going to be more appropriate. With the moment, we're looking at everything. So I should say at the top here, we're in complete mode, and we're showing in all time as well. So Splunk users will be familiar with this screen, the different periods of time you can look at this over. For the purposes of demonstration, I'm just showing everything, but you would normally be filtering this down according to a time frame. And likewise, complete mode is showing every single journey. Quick mode, very useful for just having a quick look, and it takes a sample, and that's how you would usually run this. Quite a few options down here. Again, I'm not going to go through them all, but for example, the journey step count shows up here. If I just zoom in again a little bit, you can see how many journeys go through. And you also notice the thickness of these arrows is also linked to the number of journeys passing through those steps. So everyone comes through, everyone who comes through security will eventually board the plane, 3054 in this particular sample. The absolute count is, if you go round and round circles, it will continue adding that up, whereas the journey step count just counts the number of steps in that journey as a whole. And there's also the path performance. In this particular case, this is going to be the timings, how long it takes to pass through each step. Obviously, in the case of an airport, that could be quite a long time, but if you were looking at the performance of a computer system, those could be very small lengths of time, but they add up, and that could be really important, particularly for something like a retail website where the end-to-end process time needs to be managed very carefully. Right, let me just get this sorted again. This is touch sensitive. Right, so let's do a couple of quick demos. Just get that right. Do a couple of quick demos. So let's have a look at the sorts of questions that you might ask of the system. What might you do with it? What would be the reason for using it? Once it's been built, you can use it to potentially improve efficiency of your code or your systems. Look for bottlenecks. I think that's going to be a key use for this, finding bottlenecks in your systems, whether it's for timing purposes or whatever. And also in a DevOps context, checking the impact of updates, so you can compare your live system with your development system and see if there are any clear anomalies that indicate there might be a problem. So I'm just going to do a couple of very quick demonstrations of how we would actually use that to answer some of these questions. So I mentioned before, this looks like it's data from a US website, because quite a few people are bypassing passport control. So if we were now to do an A/B comparison, let's open up one of these. So what we're looking for is step. There we go. So these are all the steps you can pass through, and you can see these pluses and minuses. You can eliminate or insist that particular components are included. So if I want to say everything passing through passport control, you can see that we've now narrowed down our journeys to 637 out of 3,441, with a longer average duration than we had before. And if we do an A/B comparison here, you can see that we've now got an average journey time of 3.3 hours. Previously, we had an average journey time of 2.8 hours. So immediately seeing the impact of ensuring that the flow passes through that particular step. Up across here, you'll see also the filter options being included, and each one of these can be saved. Okay. So let's remind myself how to get rid of the A/B comparison. Okay. All right. Well, we'll work with it for the moment. So what's the next one I had? Attributes, right. So across the top here, we have attributes. And these are extra bits of information that aren't core to the data, but allow us to see a bit more. So for example, here you've got the gates being used, and you can see that 129 journeys, that's the top one there. This is more like a conventional Splunk dashboard. Likewise, if we quickly jump over to metrics, I'll show that quickly as well. That is also, as I said, more familiar territory there, more like a Splunk dashboard, but shows those more aggregated values that you would expect to see in Splunk. Okay, so we'll do a conversion rate now, a conversion piece. So let's say we're asking the question, how many people go from the frequent flyer area to the dining area? So this is really straightforward to set up. So we leave the frequent flyer lounge and we go into the dining area. How many people do that? Okay, and at this point you should be seeing percentage, but we're not. I'm going to add another step. We're going to go from the dining area then into duty free, and just to demonstrate, for some reason we're not getting the percentages up here, live demonstration and all that, but you can move these around, show the impact of changes, add and remove other points there. So it's a very versatile tool. It has lots of quite unique features compared to other Splunk tools, and I think it represents a real opportunity for a very different way of cutting your data and looking at it and getting value from it. So that's Splunk Business Flow. I shall pass back to James to finish us off.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Paul. Okay, guys, appreciate we're just coming up to the hour mark. So just a quick review. We've had a few questions coming through, which I'll quickly try to rattle through. But if you want to send any more through, please feel free, and we will endeavour to get back to you after the session. You can also reach out on the address below and telephone number if you have any follow-up questions or you just want some additional information on the content that's been shown today. One of the questions coming through. Is the Somerford DPT offering free? Yes, it is. It's a free offering. And we can go into more information on that again if you want to reach out. We need to set up a follow-up demonstration or call just to outline the principles of that and what it is we're looking to achieve there. You mentioned a deeper dive on the Splunk Machine Learning Toolkit. Where can I find this information? The Machine Learning Toolkit workshops and webinars are available on our website. Obviously, there's a wealth of content available on Splunk itself, but we have also created independent workshops, virtual workshops that run on a monthly basis. So feel free to take a look on the Somerford website there. And there's also a webinar that's been recorded as well, I believe. Just a prompt, I've been advised to let everyone know as well, the offer around Somerford Here to Help, that's available to all Splunk users, not just Somerford existing customers. So if you are having challenges with regards to your Splunk platform, or maybe a technology that you might see also listed within our portfolio, feel free to reach out. It's a genuine offer for us at the moment. If you've got any difficulties or challenges, then we are here to help, and that's extending to all our solutions. So not just existing Somerford customers. So if we can help, we will try our best to do so at this time. And a final one from me, just a reminder, some of you already are registered for it, but for those who found the content interesting around, say for instance, what Airbus have been achieving across the security operations or the Bank of England in terms of how they formulated their SOC and the usage of technology within that SOC, so utilising Splunk and Splunk ES and Splunk Phantom. There is an ES virtual workshop that's running tomorrow, where you can get hands-on and the guys will take you through a more deep dive into those specific technologies. So please feel to take a look and see if something takes your fancy. If not, I really appreciate everyone's time today. I hope you found it informative. The deck and the recordings will be sent out, so you will have access to the information, and I hope to see you again soon. All the best. Bye-bye.